All right, here we go. Texans take on the Bears in the Hall of Fame game. First time the Texans have played in the Hall of Fame game since I myself played in the Hall of Fame game in 2002. It was an inauspicious beginning. I didn't leave that game versus the Giants after Jeremy Shockey bulldozed the soul of one of our defensive backs in Jeremy Shockey's coming out party. That we were on to greatness that particular season. It was a little bit nerve-wracking, actually. This is a much different Texans team this year. So much so that the adulation from the national media has almost gotten to the point where I'm a little bit nervous, like I'm being set up like Braveheart for an ambush or something. Louis Riddick's been very bullish on the Texans all year, but I am curious. I just saw this clip. Somebody sent it to me. I watched like the first 10 seconds. And I said, nope, I got to get on the old YouTube before we begin the pregame show on Sports Radio 610 in just about an hour. Yep, at 4 p.m. So I want to go through, and I know he gives a bunch of takes about the Texans, and if anything, I think there's some things that we as Texans fans, and I know I'm going to get a lot of Bears fans through the algorithm. This will be a nice little preview for you for this game tonight. But there are lingering concerns about the Texans, and we'll see if they address them, because some of the lingering concerns, like the run game and everything, not everybody has done. But Louis Riddick is really good, so I'm intrigued to hear what he thinks the strengths and the weaknesses are.
I do think that overall, as an organization, the Texans are one of those teams who look. And you know me, I like to kind of live on the edge in terms of trying to project who's on the come. Who is the team that right now you're saying, well, I got to see it in order to believe it, but who do you?
All right, first off, let's look at the caption. Is our Texans the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC? So biggest, that's up for debate, but I don't know if he addresses this or not.
You believe it, that they have the right stuff before you actually see it. I think the Texans are that, and I'll tell you why. Look, I think their roster, when you look at it 1 through 53, their defense is going to be a top 2, top 3 defense in the NFL.
Okay, top 2 or top 3 defense in the NFL. You go to the Ravens last year, and the Ravens took some losses. The Chiefs, one of the best defenses in the NFL. They, lost a cornerback, but they retained Chris Jones. But I like their young cornerbacks too. For the Texans, a lot of it it's this pass rush. It's going to be whether or not this pass rush can deliver on what it looks like they might be able to do.
Okay, DeMeco Autry being suspended for the first 6 games, that hurts him. No question, because he's one of the most versatile inside-outside pass rushers in the NFL. Bart, you know that better than anybody.
Fact check. Bart Scott does know that. Other fact check. DeMeco Autry hurts. Not in that it's like the end of the world. It's not the end of the world if DeMeco Autry can't play for the first 6 games, and these things are rarely overturned. It seems like he may have appealed it already. But DeMeco Autry signed in the offseason to a 2-year, $20 million contract, and 12 sacks last year, rushing both inside and outside. For some of the concerns about the defensive tackle position, DeMeco Autry was the salve for that, because once Danielle Hunter came on, then okay, DeMeco's going to play more inside than he would have otherwise. The only thing that really concerns me about it is whatever medication he was taking that he says the compounding pharmacy screwed up. He is 33 years old. Like, what if he was taking it before and just hadn't gotten tested yet, and that was part of his resurgence or his strong season at a relatively advanced age? They get tested a lot. So I don't think that was probably the case. It would have come up before or during the season instead of the off season.
How important guys like that are. But this team can rush the passer. They were number 2, I believe, in the NFL in pass rush win rate as a team last year. They've got horses, man, and they're going to be even better this year.
Okay, fact check. As far as number 2 in pass rush win rate, ESPN uses the GPS data that I don't really trust. Some of the other stat services that measure it a little bit more with the eyeballs, I think would had them lower than that. Because what ESPN will do is like, okay, if a guy gets, at least the way I read it after watching some Texans games and seeing that their pass rush win rate was as high, even though it didn't look like it. Like, if the GPS data says that the guy got close to the quarterback, they're considering that a win. They didn't get really good at that until the back part of the season, and especially when Will Anderson, and it started to click for him. And when Derek Barnett came on, and who's still on the team this year. So I think he's being a little overly it's an overly positive appraisal of how it was last year. But I think Will Anderson looks good. He's 265 pounds, which is the weight I've always thought that he should settle in at after now that he's a full-time defensive end. Danielle Hunter looks like Danielle Hunter. And then the guys like Derek Barnett and the other backups, like for depth and rotation, that they look really good. So it's going to be a great edge rush. The interior rush is a little bit more up for concern until DeMeco Ryans gets back.
Third level is as good as anyone's on defense. Offensively.
Okay, second and third level as good as anyone's on defense. I'm believing more and more that the cornerback position is going to be just fine as long as Derek Stingley can be healthy. Because Kamari Lassiter has gotten better by leaps and bounds over the course of 2 weeks, and it's not like he started off bad. He was good in OTAs, he was good in minicamp, but he's just steadily just latched onto dudes a little too literally sometimes. Gotten flagged for defensive holding and interference a few times when the official's there. So he latches on literally a little too much, but it's like I think the cornerbacks are going to be just fine. Is Jimmy Ward staying healthy at safety is a concern. If Jimmy Ward can stay healthy, then that'll be all right. The big question mark tonight, and if you're a Bears fan watching, if you're a Texans fan that wonders about Jalen Petrie, I hope Jalen Petrie plays tonight. He's been rolling with the ones at nickelback, playing in the slot a lot. I'm skeptical that he'll be an every down nickelback. I just he doesn't quite have the coverage skills of an actual cornerback. I mean, he looks like he plays like a safety who's playing corner sometimes and playing slot sometimes. So I think a lot of that relies on the pass rush being really, really good, because then you can play zone behind it, and then they can use Jalen Petrie creatively, blitzing, disguising coverages, him dropping back into deep coverage, that kind of stuff. A lot of like what he did at Baylor. So but he's got to learn. Like, there's an indoctrination here. He's got to get up to speed, and he's had 2 weeks of going against Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins. It's been a pretty good trial by fire, but I do hope he plays tonight and gets a lot of time in the regular season games. If you're watching this afterwards, feel free to comment on whether I was right or wrong about him playing. Wait a second.
CJ is going to take the next. CJ is going to continue to surprise with just how poised and well beyond his years this young man is. The offensive line is solid. It's not great. It's solid. They need to be better running the football.
Okay. CJ, yes. Like, wise beyond his years. Like, to a man, every single ex-quarterback, ex-coordinator, current defensive backs and linebackers, when they talk about CJ Stroud, they're blown away by how advanced he is mentally. The stuff that you hope a quarterback is doing by his third year in the NFL, CJ's doing that. Obviously, you're not going to see him versus the Bears. DeMeco's already said, DeMeco hasn't said it, but a lot of the starters aren't going to play tonight. So I think that I don't worry about CJ at all, as long as the receivers can stay healthy. But the offensive line I worry about, especially if we're talking about, like the banner says at the bottom of the clip we're watching, can the Texans beat the Chiefs? Like, Chris Jones is a problem. You know, the Texans' interior offensive line in the playoffs versus the Ravens last year just absolutely crushed any chance of CJ playing like CJ, because he was running for his life with pressure right up the gut from Matabike and those other interior defensive linemen for the Ravens. So when I think about, like, okay, I think right now it's got the makings of a really good regular season offense. When push comes to shove in the postseason, Kenyon Green and Juice Scruggs really got to get there. And I think that they've got the potential to. A lot of the errors in the first couple of weeks and a lot of the bad plays have been as much mental as physical, so they can get that on board. Kenyon Green looks different physically, but I do think he is in competition. I think Juice Scruggs, I'll be surprised if Juice Scruggs doesn't win the starting job. Like Patterson, who did well when he had to fill in at center last year, did good things and played better than I thought he would, but he still looks raw in a lot of ways. So the offensive line, and not to mention both your offensive tackles get injured a lot. The Titus Howard has never played a complete season. Laramie Tunsil isn't currently healthy. And Blake Fisher, the guy that they've got working as the swing tackle right now, he's looked a lot like a rookie who needs some development. So hopefully Blake Fisher can come along. If you're a Bears fan watching, Blake Fisher in there, that's a second-round pick for the Texans. A lot of people thought he should have stayed in for an extra year and probably could have gone in the first round next year. I think that's exactly what he looks like. Just needs some refinement of his technique and just putting on some of his man weight, like looking like a full grown man. Right now, he's a little bit stretched out. He's got a lust for violence, just based on college stuff. So I do appreciate a lust for violence from offensive tackles. This team could use a little bit more lust for violence out of their offensive linemen.
In the red area, and they've already said down there that Stephon Diggs has looked spectacular. They can't cover him. And you know that he's not the only guy with Nico and Tank, who they also got on the perimeter. Here's the key, though, for me.
Okay, so in the red zone, their inability to run the ball well last year really hurt them when they got down to the red zone. It's a lot harder to just spread it out and rely on your horses when everything's compressed and the defensive backs don't have to cover as much ground. The linebackers aren't putting as much of a bind between the run and the pass. So that, as much as the offensive line needs to get better at run blocking, because they protected CJ well enough last year, but they had to do it too often by keeping in tight ends and fullbacks. You'd like to be able to spread it out more this year, like across the whole field. But they've got to be able to run the ball. And so Joe Mixon and then Dameon Pierce, and I think Dameon Pierce will play tonight. Jawar Jordan, Cam Akers. I'd urge you not to hold your breath on Cam Akers. He's coming off of his second Achilles tendon tear. And he didn't do all that great after his first Achilles tendon tear. The Rams tried to trade him once in 2022 before they successfully did in 2023. He looked a little bit better with Minnesota, but I'm going to wait and see with him. I think his value as a receiver, likewise with Jawar Jordan, he might have more value as a receiver than as a runner at this point in his career. So Dameon Pierce is really the key. If he can get good blocking tonight, I just want to see him be decisive. I want him to just take one cut and go and get vertical. He looks great physically at camp. It looks like he's more comfortable in the offense. So I'm optimistic about it, but we got to see it.
We're going to take the next step. DeMeco Ryans is one of the best leaders we've ever seen in the NFL. He's one of the best leaders in the NFL as a player. He will go down when it's all said and done as one of the best head coaches in history in terms of his leadership ability. The guy.
Okay. I don't know about it. I can't fact check his prediction for the future. I will say, I've known this since DeMeco was a rookie and I was a 10th year player. And I realized 1 week into camp, whoa, this guy, I've told you guys the story before. I was flipping out angry over something once when I was a grizzled old vet. And DeMeco talked to me and he was like a lion tamer, a beast master. He calmed me down. He woo-sawed me in my brain. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I respected him from that day forward. And that's why we called him Cap for captain when the guy was a damn rookie. He's wise beyond his years. Whatever Lawrence Fishburne was in terms of looking like a 45-year-old when he was 20, DeMeco Ryans was that way in terms of his actual maturity. So he's aged in reverse otherwise. He doesn't have that Lawrence Fishburne quality. He didn't look like he was 45, but he had the maturity of a 45-year-old when he was 20. So now it's like he's 65.
Commands everyone that he comes into contact with. Not in a threatening way, not in a I'm bigger, better, stronger than you way, but in a competency way. You feel his competence. You feel the impact that he has on you in terms of how he makes you.
Yeah, the whole Beastmaster thing. Lewis gets it. He understands it. I was afraid I was going to have to be critical of Lewis, but if anything, yeah, he's being a little too optimistic about a few things right now. We got to talk about the linebackers too. But I think I couldn't tell if he was saying confidence or competence. I think the one thing that people missed, including really smart film analysts and everything, because they wouldn't, when they're watching film, they're not usually watching the TV copy, obviously. Watching that team in real time last year, the thing that really amazed me and blew me away was how good the game management was. You had a rookie head coach, a defensive-minded one at that, and they had so few sketchy decisions. And I wouldn't even say the ones that were kind of debatable were genuinely debatable, whether to kick a field goal in the Jacksonville game, things like that. It was, I honestly think there are a couple things. One, DeMeco is very open to the analytics. So I don't think he bucks at all when people are giving him information from the booth about probability, this, that, clock management, all of that. He's that perfect, almost like AJ Hinch type of guy where he was a player in the league, so he's got that experience, but he's also got an appreciation for the analytics. And then the other thing is that he's very, very bright. So as a defensive coach, he's not worried about the offensive play calling when the offense is in game management crucial situations. So I think with him having that perspective, and then also just having the intelligence, and then like the calm, cool, and collected demeanor, he's not flying by the seat out of his pants out there. And it was really one of the things that you can't pin down in the stats or anything necessarily, but it was one of the most impressive things I thought he did last year.
And he's doing that for that franchise. I would have not bet on the Texans to be as good as they were last year. I would have bet my whole life savings on it and lost everything.
Okay, that would have been dumb, because it's really hard. It's incredibly hard to predict who the worst team in the NFL is going to be on any given year. Yeah, they just jump right out at you. The Carolina Panthers, remember? Oh, Bryce Young's in the best position he could be. Boy, he went to a great situation. It was a hell of a situation. You fire the coach several games into this. It was a mess of a situation. It's easier to predict who the best team in the league is going to be. I'm guessing a lot of people picked the Chiefs last year. So I would tell him he would have been wrong on that. It's the advice I would have given him if he was betting on any kind of futures bet on BetUS, which is a great pace. If you're looking for your online book, BetUS right now, they are matching. They're giving you 125% bonus on initial deposits up to $2,000. You can find a link in the description below. Back to my friend Lewis, who's become my friend again.
Because I underestimated wrongfully just how strong that man is. The Texans are for real. And even though everybody knows they're coming this year, they're still going to do what they need to do.
Okay. I feel good. I feel good about his assessment. I think he underestimates the challenges that the offensive line might have. I think when he talked about the second and third level of the defense, when Alshire and Christian Harris are playing, yes, I feel good about that. I know a lot of you have expressed concern about who the Sam linebacker is going to be. And for this, just if you don't know what a Sam linebacker is, in a 4-3, the Sam linebacker lines up to the side of the tight end. He tends to be the bigger, stronger, more physical guy. That's changed a lot over the past decade or so, and a lot of teams don't worry as much about a guy looking like a prototypical Sam, because the pass game is of paramount importance. So I think that whoever their third best linebacker is, if it's going to be Henry To'oTo'o, if it's Neville Hewitt, if it's Hansen, Hansen flies around out there. Jake Hansen is very athletic, probably just a little bit undersized by classic Sam linebacker standards. But the other thing too is there's just so much pre-snap motion that you start worrying about matching up to the tight end too much. It just gets to be a quagmire out there. I feel good about the linebackers in terms of Alshire and Christian Harris. Henry To'oTo'o, the biggest thing that concerns me right now is that, man, athletically, it just feels like the way he moves, everything about him, he looks like a Mike linebacker. And I don't know how much he's not as athletic as Delshon Phillips, who came via the Ravens. He was a special teams player for the Ravens and the Bills for the first 4 years of his career. Really, really good on special teams. Incredible athlete. Hadn't had a lot of opportunity or reps at linebacker. They've been rotating him out there on nickel to play alongside Alshire, so I think he's going to get a chance. But that's probably one of the, as much as we talk about the wide receiver position being hugely competitive, the battle for that third linebacker spot right now, that's pretty fierce. I think there's a lot of guys that you can feel good about that are good on special, like Neville Hewitt's great on special teams. Delshon Phillips also, I think he's got $2 million guaranteed. Henry To'oTo'o is a draft pick, but it's in his second year. I'm going to be watching those guys tonight to figure out, all right, exactly who flashes, who looks like a guy I can trust. Check that on, what did you see? Someone on set chuckled into the mic. Oh, okay. I haven't looked at your comments at all, guys, because I was transfixed by Louis Riddick. Hope to see Juwan Jordan out there, right? Jawar Jordan. See if they actually let Lassiter, since he's been presumed a starter. I'm intrigued by that too. I would like to see Lassiter play. Look, I don't care how good somebody looks in practice. I don't care that he's doing against Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins and Tank Dell. There's something to be said for just doing it, playing live tackle football. Plus, remember, and I just keep harping on this, Lassiter was very physical, kind of handsy in college, not to an extreme degree, not like when, and he hasn't looked, remember when Lonnie Johnson got here, he was a bigger physical guy, and he was way too physical. He used his hands a lot. Lassiter's got better feet than him. Lonnie he was so big too that it was hard for him to use his feet as much. But he's been flagged a few times by the officials during practice. He's learning what he can and can't get away with. But I think continuing that experiment is probably a good thing to do in live time with actual officials out there. What would the Texans have to rank with the run at the end of the season for you to be optimistic going into the playoffs? That's a very good question. I mean, if you look at the offense that this team is modeled after, the San Francisco 49ers, and DeMeco models his defense after the DeMeco Ryans 49ers defense, he's done a pretty good job so far. He's got to get back up to San Francisco DeMeco standards this year. But the 49ers just mash in the run game. And when this offense is clicking well, go back to the Rams in the early McVay days. They didn't do it with 2 tight end sets and a fullback. They did it out of 3 wide receiver sets, but they could run the ball. They want to and need to run the ball because that's what sets up the play action so well. So for them to be a real threat, like playing football the way they want to play football, I would say top 5 in rushing offense, but it's still going to be a big improvement over last year if they're just top 10. And if you go by yards per carry and things like that actually matter, just not volume stats. He's a rookie. He'll get some snaps tonight. I don't know. I can't even remember who I was talking about at that point. Didn't the Steelers win championship year 2 with Mike Tomlinson? Mike Tomlin, I believe. Tomlinson's never won a damn thing for the Steelers. Never done a damn thing for him. I think the Chargers never won anything with LaDainian Tomlinson. But with Tomlin, I think, they're 2 different types. I think it's easy to look at for one, you know what Tomlin did? Tomlin had Dick LeBeau as his defensive coordinator. So Tomlin was a defensive-minded guy, but stepped into a situation where they said, well, no, Dick LeBeau's really good. He's going to remain the defensive coordinator. So I think what he did with Roethlisberger was probably more impressive. Roethlisberger was already good. So, there's obviously some similarities there. Young, charismatic, defensive-minded coach that just manages to get the best out of guys. That's how I could see DeMeco. Like in any given year, he does it. He's got a different personality than Tomlin, but I think he's just got that ability to connect with people and an ability to create competition. The Steelers forever have been known as a team that has very physical training camp practices. DeMeco wants these training camps competitive and physical. I think Matt Burke helps DeMeco with the game management a lot too. Burke was a game management specialist once upon a time. That's a really good point for the Jets, but was a game management specialist for the Jets. So Jake Hansen, 35, and Marcus Harris, 59. Yes. So we talked about Jake Hansen. I'm guessing you did that before I talked about him. But Marcus Harris, good one. Marcus Harris, 6th rounder. Very, very athletic and explosive and bigger than I thought he'd be in terms of, like, he's not a big guy. He's kind of an undersized defensive tackle, but he's super thick. I've seen him take on double teams in the run game really effectively. So he's not the tallest guy in the world. He uses that natural leverage effectively when he's taking on run blocks. So I'm intrigued by him. I also have seen improvement in how active he is with his hands. The guy I always think too, when I kind of think of like explosive, undersized guys, Ed Oliver, when he was at the University of Houston, was very, very productive, but he was doing it just off of sheer footwork and brute power, speed, and explosiveness. He wasn't good at using his hands, and it took him a couple of years in the NFL for it to really click for him up with the Bills, and he did a good job of it. But I think Marcus Harris understands that challenge because his film in college I thought looked a little bit similar. He'd kind of ping pong his way off of people, getting across the line really fast, getting across the line of scrimmage really fast. But it's got to be harnessed a little bit, and it's got to be refined. So he works his butt off. There's not a lot of McTelvin Agim too. Another guy to keep an eye on. He's a 4th or 5th year pro, but I think it was just kind of stuck in it wasn't a good scheme fit for him in Denver, especially when he first got drafted to Vic Fangio's defense. This is much different. The comparison I always make is, Jason Babin was drafted into a Vic Fangio defense, wasn't a good fit for him, and he ended up going and thriving in Philadelphia and in Tennessee, playing a Jim Schwartz style defense, which is the grandfather to this current defense, the wide nine, super aggressive defensive front, like that. That's why Matt Burke got hired, because he had experience there in Tennessee with Jim Schwartz, and has seen a lot of nuances of this defense. I better get going because I've got the pregame show starting up in 35 minutes on Sports Radio 610. Please like, subscribe. I'll do a reaction. I might do a reaction to the first quarter. I gotta get up for my 6 a.m. show tomorrow, so I probably won't do a reaction after the game tonight. But I might do a reaction at the end of the first quarter, the first half, after some of the more notable guys have played. Everybody have a good one. Enjoy the official beginning to what will be the 2024 NFL football season. We're talking about the Texans in a way that Louis Riddick, as he said and admitted, never thought he would have been talking about them this way. And it's a good time to be alive. Just ignore everything. Ignore everything on your social media except sports, but even also some of the Olympic conversations. And then you'll be good. Then you'll be good. Everybody gets along and agrees there about everything all the time in sports. We know that.